How to achieve intercultural competence. The book suggested we're looking at this idea, how do we find a way to interact in a positive and powerful way where things are appropriate based on people's ethnic backgrounds and diversity? How do we do this in a good way? How do we do this in a powerful way? How do we do this in a way that allows us to respectfully work with people from different cultures? So we're going to look at intercultural competence. We're going to look at the idea of world-mindedness. Another term for that is going to be cultural relativity, attributional complexity, and then communication accommodation. So how do we do these elements? So intercultural communication, intercultural competence happens when we communicate the right way. The ways that we can do these kinds of things is to really look at the other person's culture and find ways to incorporate them into what you're already doing, find ways. And I think probably one of the interesting things to do is just ask, how do you do this in your culture? Let me tell you how we do it in our culture. Share information back and forth and communicate, because people from different backgrounds, and we really want to find ways to get along. I think a lot of times, when you're taking classes in college, part of the college instructor's job is to help you become more competent in a work environment. So how do we do that? So some of the ways that we do that is we really look at how can we manage supporting a good flow of communication between people, and teaching you is how to be thoughtful, teaching you how to work across cultures, because our world is becoming smaller, is becoming situations where it's very difficult not to be in international companies and working with companies across cultures. And even within the same company, people are going to come here from other cultures. So are you going to just say, well, it's your job to adapt to my culture? Or are you going to try to figure out ways to incorporate it? Find out ways that someone doesn't have to give up who they are. And think about when you go to another culture, are you expected to give up who you are so you fit in with the other culture? So how does that look? How do we make that work? So the first idea that we're going to look at is this idea of world-mindedness. And cultural relativity is the old term. So if you want to find more information about this in the literature, know that it could be under either one of those two terms, but they mean that basically the same thing. Cultural relativity and world-mindedness means accepting another person's culture. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily adapting it, but that you're just accepting that this person comes from a different place and you're being respectful of it. You're avoiding judgment of it. You're maybe even trying, they say when in Rome, do as the Romans. Maybe you try on some of the elements of that culture. Maybe you eat some of the food of another person's culture. You ask them questions. You find out what it's like, how they do things differently from you. Just to take care of your own curiosity and just be curious about the other person's experience and how they live in the world. Ethnocentrism is the belief that your own culture is superior. You're going to be comparing your culture to another person's culture. So obviously, the culture you came from is superior to another person's culture. So this idea of comparing and making someone else's culture be wrong, or having contempt for another person's culture. I mean, they're still humans. All of us are humans. So a lot of the elements that make us human are still going to be there, but how we choose to express them may be different based on our culture. Attributional complexity. Here, what we're doing is we're acknowledging other people have complex causes. So develop the ability to observe other people's behavior and look at the forces that might be influencing it. So we're doing some what we call perception checking. We're looking to see if our perception or our belief about what's actually happening is true, because a lot of times it's not true. So do I have a bias? Am I assuming a lot about that person and who they are based on the circumstances or situations. And then demonstrate empathy. Empathy to me means that you are understanding or you are trying to put yourself in the other person's situation. So how do you look at that other person's circumstances or situation and put yourself in that situation? And the last one discussed here is communication accommodation. So how do we work with these other cultures? How do we blend with them? So accommodation means that I'm giving a little and they're giving a little. So we're looking for some kind of agreement. We're trying to work with them. So people who you want to establish relationships will oftentimes seek approval. Maybe they'll look at using language that's appropriate, you know, really trying to blend with the other person. Where someone who isn't doing that, they might be creating a more emotional distance. And in particular, that person is trying to accentuate the differences. So looking for what causes them to be different and distinct, that's an element that you want to look at here. So I think obviously from my point of view, I obviously want to create more connection with cultures. So I'm looking at finding what we have in common rather than finding or focusing on what we are, how we are different. There we go.